All right, humans and pets and whatever else is on the other side of the screen watching the video. So I'm going to make a video today called 5 Things I Hate About HPtuners. So it doesn't mean that I hate HPtuners. It just means that I'm doing a video on things that I dislike about HPtuners. Because I want to do a video series on things that I like about the software, and I want to expand this into what I learn about other programs. Like I'm using a MicroSquirt on the Mustang over there, courtesy of Matt Happel from Sloppy Mechanics, because he sent that to me. I was originally planning on doing a Holley Terminator X. I still plan to do a Holley Terminator X on that car, but he sent that to me and I started testing it and using it, and that's kind of what generated this video. So I realized there's some things that I really like about that HPtuners doesn't have. And there's some things about HPtuners that kind of are frustrating. So I wanted to go over that, my thought process, and keep in mind this is from a very beginner's perspective on tuning. I've only been using HPtuners for about 2 years, and I will 100% say that I still feel like I am very much in a beginner status, not anywhere near to be considered a tuner. I personally, right now, at this point, I wouldn't even tune somebody else's vehicle. A lot of people ask for that, but I don't. I'm not there. So, beginner's perspective, let's get into it. Updates and issues. HPtuners does a lot of updates. So, there's different versions, and you will see it if you're getting into it, and some of you guys probably know this a lot, that people will say, absolutely do not update the software, especially with the old MVPI 1. Now they have the MVPI 2. The old cable system seemed like it worked very well, and a lot of guys have the old versions, the old softwares, and they absolutely will not update them, and they don't have any issues. Seems like a lot of the guys that are updating the system or going over to the new system are starting to have issues, which makes sense because it hasn't been around as long, so they haven't been able to fix the bugs and all kinds of stuff. But one thing specifically that happened to me, somebody asked me to look at their tune file one time, and we were comparing transmission settings. So I was having some issues with the truck, and I just wanted to try like different shifting settings and different shift points, and we were just comparing files basically. So I took his file, was looking at the transmission settings, and it wouldn't let me open it because it was a different version. So what I did then was I updated the version that I had so I could see that file and we could compare. But then after that, I started having issues on a different vehicle that I was tuning, because I used to have a 350Z. And after that, and occasionally with this truck now, with that different version, it like wouldn't connect, and it like had all this weird stuff going on after I updated it. So just something as simple as that, as updating it so I could look at a different file, started causing me a headache in some other areas. So that'd be number one. And what I think is happening, and I think this has been talked about in some other places, is they have a new system, MVPI 2. So wouldn't it make sense if you were a business to phase out the original one and create a system that forces you to buy the new one? So that's kind of the conspiracy theory in my head on that one, is if you could just do some updates and make the other ones not work, then people have to buy and upgrade the other ones, send in the other stuff because it's broken, whatever. There's some other drama about that, but let's move on. So the credit system is my number 2. The credit system is kind of cool, but kind of annoying. I guess it's more annoying than cool. So when you buy it originally, you get 8 credits. At least that's what it had when I bought it. You get 8, so you can tune 4 vehicles. It's 2 credits per VIN number, and you can do 4 vehicles, which is more than enough for somebody if you're just gonna like do a swap and you're not planning on tuning other stuff, or you don't go through projects a lot. That 8 credits might last you a long time. But for me, it's frustrating because I have gone through different ECUs, different vehicles, using up those credits pretty quickly, and then you end up getting in a situation where you have to like buy more credits. So it just comes down to money, really. And that's how they make their money, which I don't fault them for that. But if you're going to be doing a bunch of different vehicles, it's kind of a big jump from doing a lot of personal vehicles to doing like customer vehicles, or enough vehicles where you would need to buy the unlimited like engine type, or an unlimited year, or unlimited all. It's a big jump in price. Really just depends on the person, but I'm kind of at that in-between point where I'm not just doing one computer. I go through multiple vehicles frequently, so it gets to that point. So number three, let's do that. Options factory disabled. So this one might be a little bit odd. Some of you guys familiar with HPtuners might not have experienced it, but there's some things that are factory disabled, like the flex fuel, and like transmission would be another one. So there's options in there where you can't just enable or disable. It shows you a drop down, but it doesn't work. So that can be kind of frustrating, especially as a new person. You're going into it and you see, oh, flex fuel. I want to enable flex fuel. So you buy a sensor, you wire it all up, you enable flex fuel, and it doesn't work. It doesn't do anything. Or transmission. So I get a computer, it has a 4L60 transmission. In the computer, I'm going to select 4L80, or I'm going to select manual, whatever. That stuff doesn't work in the computer. So it's not a huge deal, really, because there's ways around it. Like you can do segment swaps and you can fix it. But if you didn't know that, as a beginner, you would kind of chase your tail and wonder what the hell's going on, because you did all this stuff and you put this transmission in, now you got a different computer, and then it goes back to the credit system. So if you bought like a 4L60 computer and you were gonna put a 4L80 transmission in, you might end up going with a different computer or something else, and then having to use credits and whatever. It's just kind of a headache. So we'll move on from that. Number 4, the scanner editor. So there's 2 different programs for scanner and editor. And sometimes there's some issues with having the scanner running while you're trying to edit. So if you try to edit while the scanner's connected, or while you did connect and then you turned it off, it's not going to let you write. So you either have to like unplug the USB, plug it back in so it disconnects and reconnects, or you have to physically disconnect it before you can write. At least that's been my experience. And then you also just kind of have the headache of using 2 different programs. So you're in one and then you're in the other one, and you just kind of got to bounce back and forth, which isn't really a big deal. I didn't think it was a problem until I started messing with the MicroSquirt, and then I realized how easy it is because it's all in one system. So you can use your logger and you can make changes right from the data logger into the tune file, and it talks back and forth the whole time. So if you do anything in the tune, it gives you a prompt on the logger that says there was a change made. If you do anything in the logger, which is, it's basically all on screen. So it works out pretty good, and it's kind of cool. So it's something that I realized could be better. But number 5, the scanner limitations and complexity. So this one is another one that kind of came from using a different system. The scanner, you have to be very, very specific with what you want to see in order to see it. So, and you also have to put it in 2 different places, which is kind of frustrating. And I see a lot of issues reading through like HPtuners forums and Facebook pages and troubleshooting and stuff. People are always wondering what is happening or why things are not being logged, whatever. So you have to put it in your channels list, and then you have to put it in your scanner for it to read right. If it's only in one place, it's not going to read. And then, it can just be kind of complicated and frustrating to remember some of that stuff. And you go to scan and you realize something's not working right. So there's some complexity there. I've had issues with map sensors. So, and this might be irrelevant to people that are not really changing vehicles or changing map sensors or doing things differently. But you have to remember, when you change your map sensor settings, you have to change your map sensor in the scanner. You have to change the scanner. You have to change the channels list. You have to change it in the editor. There's a lot of stuff that needs to happen in order for you to be able to read it right. So when I had the 350Z, I had a 2-bar map sensor in that car, a 3-bar map sensor in the truck, and then I was going back and forth between different types of different scanners. So I had like one scanner set up for the car, one scanner set up for the truck, and it ended up happening that I was driving the truck one day after I had messed with the scanner for the car, and I had a 2-bar map sensor there, 3-bar here, and I was using the wrong map sensor settings on the scanner. So the scanner on the truck was showing 12 pounds, but I was actually over 20 pounds. So, and I ended up turning the boost controller up, and I was making some changes, and it just didn't feel right. Something felt wrong with it. And I typically, when I'm out, I'll watch the road, and I'll watch air-fuel ratio gauge, and then the boost pressure is like one of the last things I'll look at if we're prioritizing. And then I would go back to the scan, and I would look at the boost level on the scan. So scan was showing me 12 pounds, but it didn't feel right. So I decided to make another pull, look at the gauge, and it was over 20 pounds. Scanner's looking at 12. So may not happen, but something that happened to me, which was kind of frustrating. You have to change all of the stuff, and it doesn't really work for multiple vehicles. So just one thing that was frustrating to me. So one other thing too that I realized after looking at the MicroSquirt is with HPtuners, you can't look at anything after you already made the scan. So if you make a scan and then a year later you decide that you want to look at a log from previous years, which is something that I've done with this truck, because over time I decided I wanted to look at different stuff. Like I wanted to look at transmission slip and torque converters lockup and torque converter slip and different things over time that I wanted to compare to. So last year I had a lot of logs generated from different passes that I made, but then the next year I decided there was other parameters I wanted to see. And I started having issues with the transmission, and I wanted to compare what's happening here, what's happening there. You can't go back in time and look at that log and add a parameter and say, oh, now I want to look at what the transmission was doing. You have to have been logging it at that time in order for it to record anything. So what I like about the micro, and that'll be a separate video, is you can just pull up whatever you want. So that's pretty cool. It's like basically data logging everything in the background, and then you can pull in whatever the hell you want at any time. Which is cool, because if you're first coming into it, like I said, beginner perspective, you might not know what you want to see. So you're going to look at basic stuff. Map sensor, coolant temp sensor, RPM, speed, basic stuff. But then you might want to look at something else down the road, but you can't. And especially if you want to see it now and then you want to compare because you're having an issue, like what was happening then, what was happening now. Like maybe I changed this part and I have a problem, and I want to see if the change is related to, or I want to see if the problem is related to the change or related to some outside factor. You can't really see that stuff. And then another thing is not really a huge deal, but you see it quite a bit, like on troubleshooting stuff. When people are, you might accidentally add 2 channels, like map sensor 2-bar, map sensor 3-bar, and your reading is going to be like crazy on the scanner. And sometimes people just don't realize that when you have 2 channels reading the same thing, one's going to show a reading and then one's going to show 0 because it's not reading anything. And your scan is going to just go crazy. And people chase their tail trying to figure out what's wrong with their engine when it's really just 2 things in the channels list and the scanner's messed up. So instead of just being able to pull in this item and it gives you a line, So there's definitely some things that could be better, could be improved. Sometimes I feel like HPtuners is it's a steep learning curve. There's a lot of stuff in there. There's a lot of stuff that needs to be done in very specific ways. And I feel like some of the other systems, speaking from experience on this one, when I started going through stuff on the other one, I'll do a separate video on that. Some of the stuff I was just like, what? Like, it doesn't make sense how simple this is. So depending what you're doing, good and bad, this is the video. That's it.